Welcome back, everyone. This is Ion Radio and Backseat Admiral, and I am John. Hopefully my mic is working. If you guys are in chat, just let me know, and I'm going to keep rambling on. So today is, I believe, Monday, October 18th, and we're going to be discussing our latest episode, which was TF 1726 versus Mati. And I actually like both of our fleets, and this might be okay. Awesome, thank you very much. I'm glad you guys can hear me. I might not really be making very many changes or suggestions to changes for either of the fleets. They both kind of work. So how are you guys all doing today? Let's see, bit of update on what's going on with me. My wife and I, we have purchased the place and we are moving in, which is an exhausting process. I've done some actual housework, like handyman type stuff, which is not my forte. So I've painted a room, which was fun, and then one of the other rooms discovered that it had this hideous border on the top of it. And it's supposed to be, I think, a girl's room, so it was like a deep purple color, and it was like princesses all the way around the top. So my mother-in-law was like, I'll help you guys by peeling that wallpaper off, that wallpaper border off. I'm like, okay, yeah, cool, great, knock yourself off. So she peels it, and she finds behind it that there's another wallpaper border, and that one's a basketball, because apparently whoever owned the house first had both and couldn't decide on how to decorate the room. And then the wall, it was a very dark purple, which I'm trying to figure out. We're going to have to probably prime paint it first. And that was all painted over wallpaper too. So now I have this room that is just drywall with wallpaper glue all over it. So I'm going to have to prep that. So really looking forward to that. But that's not anything to do with Armada. That just has stuff to do with being an adult, I guess. It stinks. Okay, so let's flip on over to this latest match. So this was halfway through the season. It's kind of crazy how fast this has been going. TF 1726 versus Mati. Let's go over my fleet first. So my fleet is pretty simple. I have 3 Victory Star Destroyers and 2 fighters that are just meant to be there to keep fighters off of me for a few turns, hoping that I can kill all of their ships. So here we go. It's a Victory Star Destroyer 2. It has Admiral Mati. So what Admiral Mati does is he increases the hull value temporarily, or artificially, I'll call it, of all the ships. So on a small ship, he increases the hull by 1. On a medium ship, he increases the hull by 2. And on a large ship, he increases the hull by 3. So what this does for a victory in this case is it takes its hull value from 8 and it bumps it all the way up to 10, which is pretty respectable. Some notes with Admiral Mati: he does not increase the hull value of a Super Star Destroyer, because if you just follow the scale, you're like, yeah, probably huge ships get 4 hull, and they actually get no benefit whatsoever from him. So if you put him in a Super Star Destroyer list, you don't get any benefit. So I have all of 3 of my victories outfitted exactly the same except for their officer slot. So I'm going to talk about the rest of it, and then I'm going to talk about each of the officers and why I have them. So on it, I have gunnery teams, and that is mainly because I have only 3 victories, really no fighter offense, so all of my attacks need to be able to be useful, and firing theoretically 6 times instead of 3 times is way better. I have disposable capacitors so that I can throw those blue dice forward a turn early, and gunnery teams actually magnifies then the effect of disposable, because now we can throw 3 blue dice at long range twice. Heavy ion emplacements, the disposable capacitors, being able to throw it twice. Hopefully between 2 different attacks, I should be able to get a blue crit. And that blue crit then will wipe out 3 shields, 2 on the sides, 1 on the front. And that burns through shields really, really fast. Then I double down on the fact that I want to be able to eat through shields with XI7s. XI7s is one of my favorite cards. Mainly because this fleet's mainly you just rolling dice, a big handful, and calling it a day. I don't really care what my turbo laser slot is, but XI7s means that if I didn't get heavy ions off, you're not going to be able to redirect shields anyway. So it just will help to push the damage through into the ship. And like if you look, all 3 of them are exactly outfitted the same. So it makes it pretty easy because victories have terrible nav charts. If you look here, 1 and then a 1 and a blank. So they're barely going to be moving. They don't go fast. They barely move. So first turn, I take a nav. I keep the nav. And then I can adjust my speed once during the game, which is probably all that I'll need to do. And the rest of it can be like concentrate fire. Or if I wanted to, I could eventually switch over to engineering if I really want to try to keep a ship alive. But con fire means that all of these cards, the disposable, the heavy ion, and the XI7s in gunnery teams will work in conjunction with each other every single round, which is pretty awesome. So my first officer is Commander Vanto, and he is, after you resolve a first command during your activation, you may exhaust this card to gain 1 command token of any type. Awesome. I'm going to be concentrating firing or engineering, and then I'll get the opposite. So near the end of the game, if I want to, I do my engineering, I resolve it, and then I take a concentrate fire token, and then in the same exact turn, I get to use gunnery teams because I'll spend out that token to get it. Or if I really need to navigate up or down a speed or to 0, I can use him to grab a nav. So that ship pretty much can do whatever commands it wants. Next one. When another friendly ship at distance 1 to 3 reveals a command, you may exhaust this card to gain 1 command token of the same type. So he works in conjunction with your other 2 ships, and as long as you planned ahead on what commands you're doing, he could do the opposite, and then you get both tokens. So for him, if I have Vanto doing concentrate fire, I could then have him doing engineering on his ship, and then he's pulling that concentrate fire token toward him, and then they're both pretty much doing exactly what they want the entire game. Sadly, that's kind of where my token stuff runs out. So here we have Hondo. He's cheap and he filled the spot perfectly. It'll allow me to just throw out 2 tokens that I need to power my ship. So those are my 3 officers, and they all kind of just do exactly what they need to do, which is help provide me to get tokens so that I can either move a little bit faster or engineering to stay alive a little bit longer. When we get more into the gameplay, I'll talk about why this isn't necessarily a good fleet, but why it works under certain circumstances. My 2 fighters are Valen Rudor and Sienna Ray, and they are pretty much the Imperial's answer to, I just want to have a really cheap, because it costs a total of 30 points, you don't get to touch me for like 2 turns with your fighter ball. They both have scatter, so if you use both their scatters, that cancels between the 2 of them 4 attacks. And then they still have whatever their health is. Valen can't even be targeted unless if you're also engaged with Sienna because of his ability, and Sienna treats all attacks against her as obstructed, which is pretty powerful against fighters when you're reducing their dice count by 1. And she can't really be flacked by most ships unless you have at least 2 dice, because she just cancels it out and she's obstructed. And she has counter 2, so while you're trying to wipe out my squadron ball, I'm doing damage to you. It's just a speed bump. If I really need to, I can use one of my victories and I could do a squadron command once or twice, depending on how the game board is, to activate them, so then make sure that I get my attacks off, and I might be able to whittle down a fighter screen as I'm dying but for the most part, they're just here for to be throwaway, and just keep my one of my victories from being bombed to death, because that's one of their main weaknesses is fighters. Okay, moving on to Ken's fleet. And if you have any thoughts or comments, start throwing them into the chat now, and I'll get to them when I'm done with this, and then, standard way. So this is his TF fleet. He has the Recusant Light Destroyer. It has TF 1726. It has Wat Tambor on it to try to help keep it alive. It has gunnery teams, linked turbolaser towers, and Patriot's Fist. So the last time we talked about a Recusant, we were discussing if you want gunnery teams and Patriot Fist on the same one. And that last build, I said yes, it would be useful. For this build, I actually think that I would go the opposite direction with it and say that you don't want gunnery teams and Patriot's Fist for this. And this is just to do with how the ship will synergize together. TF only works on one attack per turn. So to maximize that one attack, you want to get as many dice as possible. Gunnery teams, while it allows you to shoot twice in two different directions, you can't use TF on both those shots. And Patriot's Fist only allows you to attack once. So you might as well lean heavily into attacking once and put other upgraded cards on it. Give me 1 second. I'm going to move my picture. There we go. So if we look at here, what other things could we put on here? You could actually put the super battle droids on here for the same cost, and that might be better because then this ship would be able to trigger its own raid tokens if it gets into medium range. But for the most part, I think this ship wants to be at constantly long range, or you could put an ordnance power on it. So I would remove gunnery teams and add either B2 or an ordnance. I did not transition that over. Yeah, I know how to stream. So I'm just going to say that again. So if you look at the other upgrade slots that you have available, if you remove the gunnery teams, you could add in a B2 or you could add in an ordnance, and I think that would be more valuable to double down on the fact that TF only works once and Patriot Fist works once. So you just lean heavily into this build specifically into attacking once per turn. And I will return to normal. Okay, so then the rest of the fleet is pretty simple. It is 4 hard cell battle refits with B2 rocket troopers in linked turbolaser towers. Perfect. There's really nothing else to say about this. In a TF list, you need to be able to have B2s to be able to throw the raid tokens on for TF to even be useful. And most times when you're rolling handfuls of red dice, linked turbo laser towers is the best option. And with this, you could theoretically do a huge anti-squadron attack. So you roll in your blue and your black to begin with. Then you can concentrate in a black. And then Link Turbo Laser Tower says that you can add in 2 more blacks. And then you B2 for 2 more blacks. Like, this can just obliterate squadrons, like, straight out. So let's say blue, 1 black, concentrate fire, 2 black. You could get up to, 6 anti-squadron dice if done right with Link Turbo Laser Towers and B2s. It's a fun combination, even when you're not playing TF. Mostly you will only see it during playing TF, but like if you really wanted to, you could outfit a hard cell like this and just be like, hey, that's fighter there, I really don't like. It can die. So honestly, the only change that I would recommend for Ken's fleet is drop gunnery teams and add probably B2s. Not entirely settled on that, or an ordnance upgrade. That's it. There's not very many moving parts for this fleet. A lot of moving ships, not a lot of moving parts. So let's go over objectives. And I was second player, and this is no surprise to anyone. This is my standard array of, I have ships, but not really fighters, and I want to sit still. And these objectives kind of make being able to go second make victories function, because victories don't want to really move because they're terrible at moving. So surprise attack says your flagship goes there, and you can play this one of two ways. You can play it of, okay, I put your flagship here, and then I'm going to race across it, and I'm going to try to shoot you down faster. Which, for the most part, if they have like one big ship and not a lot of other combat ships, will work. It doesn't really work against like a semi-MSU swarm list like this. So in this case, you throw it around the other side of the board, and you're like, you're in timeout over there. I'm going to sit over here in this other corner, and you're going to have to come get me. And I automatically win by a margin of 0 unless you're able to do that. So that's what surprise attack says. Contested outpost pretty much says the same thing. You get to fly into my firing line, or I get 120 points. And then Solar Corona says, wherever you set up, I'm going to set up so that it benefits me the most. And you don't get accuracies, which is pretty phenomenal when you're running around with no defensive retrofit slot and 1 brace. It just helps keep my already tanky ships alive a little bit longer. So looking at these options, Ken went ahead and chose Solar Corona, which I'm fine with. It did cost him a couple accuracies throughout the game, but that's the whole reason why I took it. Okay, so before we break down fully into the game, I'm going to look at chat. I'm going to answer some questions. Again, if you have any questions, throw them in chat, and I'll try to get to them. Okay, Michael Dunn asks, how do you feel like XI7s and HIEs are redundant? If you switch to ion cannon batteries, what would the pros cons be? So yes, so I started talking about, or at least thought about it when I was getting ready for this episode. It is kind of redundant, but sometimes a lot of ships have a lot of shields. And, for example, when I'm attacking the hard cells, I'm trying to hit the side. And if I hit the side shield goes away, the rear shield is now on 1, and the front shield goes down to 2. And then I have what the rest of I roll. If I roll perfectly, and let's just say I do exactly 6 points of damage. If I don't have XI7s there, and let's say for some reason they can't spend, so I get a double to bump me up to 6, and I get a accuracy to cancel out the brace. A lot of what ifs. But if I do that and I get 6 damage to go through, they could only redirect 1 to the front or the rear, and then they're taking 5 damage, and then I could straight out kill it. Otherwise, they could move 2 damage to the front, and it would be fine. So it's just there on the off chance of most small ships have 2 shields everywhere. The heavy ion emplacement will take off 1 of those shields from the sides. In XI7s just guarantees that they're not going to be redirecting more of it. It's just mainly to drill faster through ships. But yes, you could switch it out for another ion card. And you're asking specifically about ion cannon batteries, which let me look just to make sure that is the card that I'm thinking of. Yeah, so that's the card that I was using. Not yet. I do use, spoiler, all the episodes. So we record them, and then we decide on what order we're going to release them, so that the fleets and battles look cool. But yes, I'm actually going to be using a fleet that has ion battery cannons very, very shortly. But I already ran it. You guys didn't know that. Choose and discard 1 command token from the defender. If the defender does not have any command tokens, the defender hull zone loses 1 shield instead. So yes, this would be useful. I actually think there's a place for it. I haven't really come up with a list that benefits from it super well. You'll see my attempt to add it shortly in a couple weeks. But I think that being able to eliminate tokens from ships is really important for what the game currently is. And I've thought this since the beginning of 1.5, that because tokens are so important for refreshing cards and just being there in general. Like the Gars, like they are heavily reliant on tokens shenanigans, and the Imperial as well need it to trigger ECM and have a nav token and have concentrate fire tokens that are just used for triggering things. So that would be useful. It wouldn't be useful against a small little ship, but it could be useful against pretty much bigger fleets. I still wanted to lean into HIE, and one of the reasons for that is if I switched it out, I would gain what? Those are 5. HIEs are 9, so I would gain 12 points. What else do I add for 12 points? A 12-point bid? I could do a 12-point bid and always bid for second player, so that is a possibility. In my view, the firepower of the 3 victories is very destructive. Maybe a fighter list could have done something, but I don't know. That's from Jan, and he also says small ships die so fast against Star Destroyers. They do, man. That is actually what I'm going to be getting into in just a second, of what are the biggest weaknesses of victories, and what it makes TF a difficult commander to actually do. So I'll get back to that question in a second. And, I can't say your name. We'll just call you A Black. Do you think the Patriot Fist is stronger than it needs to be? Some part of the community is starting to cry that it is undercosted for what it does. But it isn't undercosted. So let's look for a second at what it does. So it has a huge limitation that it only works at long range and medium range. It cancels out your second attack. It doesn't just say that you can't attack ships. It completely cancels out your second attack. So you're trading an attack, in essence, for 2 dice, and those 2 dice have restrictions of their own, which are that it has to be at long or medium. That is a lot of penalties for a card to add 2 dice in. So if we look at the cost of adding 2 dice in usually, and it is usually, let's say, blue dice. Well, I have it in front of me. High-capacity ion cannons. The battery armaments of your left and right zones are increased by 1 blue dice. That's 8 points. So this card is worth 7 or 6 points, and it cancels out your second attack, and you only can do it at long or medium. It doesn't do anything for the ship at close range. And all these ships are better at close range, I actually think, because then you can add black dice in. So you're very, very limited on what you can do and where those dice can be added in. And you lose a complete attack. So, like, let's see. It would be 4 plus 2 blues at long range. Like, that's not too bad. It's powerful. I'm not saying it's not. I think it's a very powerful card, but also you have to remember that the community is going to cry foul at anything that hurts them, and if you don't know how to face Patriot's Fist, it's going to throw blue dice at you and red dice for the entire game. So take it for what you will. And then you can look at the Simoon. Yeah, people also cry foul at the Simoon. Simoon has always been powerful, but 1.5 pretty much solves a lot of that. There's lots of ways to get blue dice at long range, and it's powerful, but I think the negative side effects of it only works in 2 of the 3 range bands. So rush it. Put a ship into it as fast as you can. And that it cancels out your second attack is balancement enough. Like, it's still 6 points. It's a 6-point upgrade, which is quite a lot. Okay, so let's take a look at the game now, and we can talk about the weaknesses of both these fleets. Okay, so here's the setup. Ken, because of Solar Corona, had to deploy first, so he set all of his ships up here. And if you look at the obstacles, I kind of forced it that direction, because if he were to have placed into this nice open gun line area, I totally would have then placed over here, and then he would have had to fly through it. If you place in the middle where these are, it would pretty much obstruct it. So this is pretty much where he had to start. I, on the other hand, have this nice smooth, I get to fly into the station and try to avoid all these obstacles and have a good time because I barely move. And this side of the map, marked by this giant yellow block, is our solar corona. So anything that shoots into this side of the map is going to get its accuracy removed on the initial thing. So at this time, let's start talking about what the weaknesses are. So victories are extremely slow and can't move. They actually have decent gunnery power and weapons for their class. Also, their cost is askew, but that has a lot to do with the weaknesses of core set and all the stuff that is older, not necessarily knowing where the game was going yet, so development error or lack of knowledge for future releases. That's what I think. So victories are slow, they can't move very fast, and they're a bit too much expensive for what they are compared to the rest of the ecosystem. And they die fast to fighters. And the reason why they die fast to fighters is they are slow. You can't escape them. You can't be like, I'm landing in your fighter ball and then the next turn I'm flying away. No, I'm going to be in your fighter ball for the rest of the game. If you put a fighter in front of a victory and just let it sit there, the victory will overlap it every single turn until the game's over. Or it dies. It's probably going to die. And it has only blue anti-squadron. And I get it, at the beginning of the game, they weren't going really heavily into 2 dice anti-squadron. But honestly, this ship needs either a black dice or 2 blue for anti-squadron. In the core set, the only ship that has more than 1 anti-squadron is the Neb B, and it was designed to be like a support ship. Which is one of the reasons why, if you just play the opening box set, I actually think the Rebels have an advantage because X-Wings have more health, so a single victory will never be able to flak down an X-Wing squadron ball, and the Neb B will be able to kill out all the TIE fighters within like a turn and a half, 2 turns with its flak. So it's really lacking on flak, and then it just gets eaten by fighter balls, so that's like a double whammy. So if you get a fighter ball into a victory, the victory is going down very, very shortly. So that's like in the paper, rock, scissors matchup of Armada. Victories are rock and fighters are paper, and they're just going to cover them and kill them. The weakness for Ken's fleet is that the best way how to do raid tokens is B2s. It's really, honestly, the only way. And the best way how to deploy them is to use hard cells. And when you have a fleet of small little hard cells, they pop very, very fast to bigger ships. And you need to be able to get into medium range. So you have this dilemma of, I want to be able to go first so that I can get my raid off and things like that. But now I'm in the struggle of how fast do I have to go to be able to end a turn in range of a ship, that I can get then the blue dice off. And it's a challenge because when you saw me play TF last season, my hard cell, I tried to position it so then I could activate it and throw a raid, and it just got annihilated. So that's part of the problem with TF as a whole, but that's part of the fun of the strategy of it. So you need to be able to move into range, but you're probably an MSU list build, so he has 5 activations to what's now average like 3 to 4, so the other player's going to get pass tokens, so they're going to control that engagement range best they can to avoid you being able to control your engagement range. And like when you have a setup like this, that I'm going to be on this side of the board and you're going to be on this side of the board, and then I have additional health, which is going to make it harder for you to kill me, which is what I want. I'm fine sitting here saying, I'll just sit over here and wait for you to come to me, and if you choose not to come to me, I automatically win. And as you come to me, my whole goal is to just pick off 1 or 2 of your hard cells, because that's going to be trading points for what my ships are worth. My ships are all worth roughly 100-ish points, plus my admiral because he's a bit more expensive. So they're all like 100 and 120 points with 30 points of squadrons, which I'm willing to sacrifice if I can keep your squadrons off me. And then you also, so I need to kill 3 hard cells and I win. Because if I kill 3 hard cells, you're probably not taking down more than one of the victories, so the points just work out. That's a narrow victory. So, like, the window for victory for this game for me is I'll sit here and wait for you. And for Ken, it's I have to engage, and I have to engage at a proper range for my abilities to go off. So it really puts the initiative on Ken and the difficulty of Ken to get into proper range while I have pass tokens and I'm like, okay, cool, I'll just wait, and then I'll move it to a perfect position that you're not going to get your stuff. So that's like the dynamics of, if you look at this game from the start, what's going to happen. So let's see how it actually turns out. That did not rotate forward. Okay, so as you can see, I'm doing my thing. I'm moving nice and slow. Ken's trying to maneuver his fleet to be able to strike me all at once. So he needs to go fast, though, because turns are going to tick down. It's only a 6-turn game. So if you're not moving quickly, you're never going to be in range. And if you're not in range, you're not going to be able to shoot and get your attacks off. And not only can you not do it in medium range, you need to be able to do it when you're in... Sorry, you can't just do TF at long range. You need to get something into medium range. So into the first turn, this is where we're sitting. I have my fighters. Like, honestly, it was a pain to remember to move my fighters because they were so not anything in this game. Into turn 2. We're still not in engagement range, so I'm doing exactly what I want. I'm just burning turns. With the increased health, that means that it's going to take longer to kill me, and the longer that I can have my ships out on the table, the better. Which is usually what it is, and anyway, but that's just part of my strategy for this. I'm pulling him through the asteroid and debris field, which is what I wanted to do, so that he takes damage and I don't. And it makes his shots obstructed, so his long range of shots are doing less. And then, here we go. We have engagement range. So, in the next turn, one of his small ships move forward and gets annihilated by all of my disposable capacitor shots. Which, again, like, it needs to land inside that blue range, but guess what? Victories are decent at blue range, especially victory 1s. Cool. And then his rest of the ships, because of movement, are kind of... I always do this. I point at the screen and you guys don't see it. So, these 2 ships here. These 2 ships are kind of out of position because to cut through, you couldn't because of his big ship being there. So, they're going to be out of position until later in the game. And because of pass tokens and things like that, and my token shenanigans, like, pretty much I can get a token for whatever I want, whenever I want. Between my 3 ships, I can prevent raid from really affecting me in this situation. And then I can still do all the actions I can do, like my concentrate fire. Because mainly I just want to worry about concentrating fire because there's a target-rich environment in front of me. And we're going to just start shooting it down. At the end of the next round, I've killed off 2 of his hard cells and his recusant that had to come in like this. The recusant is actually in a very hard position because it wants to stay at long range. So it could have gone slower and then it would be in the fight technically for less rounds. Or it was going max speed, so it couldn't really get here because my firing arcs are going to murder it in this side of the table because now I have the field of fire like this. Or it could have like tried to come here. It just puts Ken in a very difficult spot to get his long-range Patriot shots off. Last 2 ships are these 2, and my Star Destroyer is limping now because of Mahdi holding it together with the duct tape that he does. And then it goes down, and I think that is the last photo? Yeah. So, we end the game with my ships, these 2 not having a lot of damage done to them because he really didn't have shots against them. And then his 2 ships barely surviving, flying off. So I said that the fighters were pretty much useless. They had one chance. They had one job, and they needed to get a hit, because if we go to damage, so into the game, this is just ram damage from myself, ramming into myself, and getting hit by a couple pleak shots. If we look at Ken's fleet, it ends with this hard sell having 1 hit left. So my fighters needed to contribute at all, and that hard sell would have gone down. And then the other one had 2 health left, so it's not too bad. So let's look at the final score. So final score is Ken killed my cheap victory, which is 112 points. And then I killed his recusant and 2 hard cells for 268, which means that the margin of victory is 156, so 3-8 to me. So that's kind of how the game went. This is not a lot of moving parts for either of our fleets. Well, there is, but like each ship, it does exactly what it needs to do, nothing really more. So this was a really fun matchup for this is what happens when you do this early in the morning. This is a really fun game and fleet matchup for both of us, because it was mainly just maneuvering and throwing dice, which is always kind of fun when you do that with Armada. So if you guys have any other questions or comments about it, go ahead and let me know. Hit them up into the comment section now, and I'll get to them. I'm trying to think if there's anything else random Armada related that I want to cover. I'm hoping to get back to, I don't know, normal life in the next week-ish, so this hopefully is the last time that I'll be recording in this location. Moving forward, it will be at my new place. I have to get internet before I can do any streaming of any kind, so that's my goal for today, which makes it fun. Let me see if I can pull up a preview for what we're going to be seeing in our next battle. So that would be episode 5. So our next battle is going to be Ken using a Plo Koon list, which is fun. And then myself, I'm going to be using for the first time a trench list. And yeah, that's going to be an interesting battle. I've not really used Trench very much. I actually don't necessarily like him as a commander, so we will definitely talk about that during the game. And I think both Ken and I both love Plo Koon, and so we're just making a bunch of different Plo Koon lists from our different perspectives on Plo Koon, so we'll see how that goes. Okay, I'm going to check into comments after I gave you a spoiler for later this week, and talk about it. Okay, so Philip asks, would you have flown Ken's fleet differently? So it's hard to say how I would have flown it. We both had 400 points. There was a roll-off. I won the roll-off, and I chose to be second player, which means that he had to choose from my objectives. And I probably would not have chosen superior position. I probably would have chosen contested outpost. And the reason for that is that contested outposts, it would be a little bit more difficult to concentrate all the victories onto the same location and not overfly the outpost. So you might have to like set up your Star Destroyers to like turn into it to get you all the turns. And then I would have just lined up in front of it, and then I would really have slow rolled my recusant in, so that it got the most long-range shots as possible, so hopefully I could kill a victory quickly, and then switch to another victory. Which, again, I can't necessarily predict if that could have happened or not. And then I would have also tried to then, with my hard cells, slow roll them forward to then jump them into like close range so that they could get their B2s off as soon as possible. Whenever you choose contested outposts, though, you have to do in your head the math of how fast can I kill your fleet to score more points than you're able to kill from me. And this is actually a really poor matchup for TF because this victories are going to tank some damage, and they are also going to be throwing a lot of dice against a lot of small ships. And those small ships might not be able to survive long, so my power level for TF is going to drastically drop while I'm spending those points and trading for a Star Destroyer. But if I can trade 2 hard cells for 1 Star Destroyer, that's a decent trade because of the power curve. But still, the 2 victories, being able to throw handfuls of dice at the exact range that I need to be sitting at, is rough. It would be very difficult to fly this list. But I think that would have been a better option to choose contested outposts and go straight ahead. Because then I didn't have to worry about like doing it. I could engage on my terms in that objective. Because this is really a jousting fleet. And in a jousting fleet, you want to know where your opponent's full fleet is. And Solar Corona gives too much information away. Because I could center deploy, but then I have to take 2 turns to redeploy. So that's how I would have played it differently. I would have started from the objective. I actually don't remember what Ken's objectives were for this, if he were to have gotten first player. I mean, honestly, the game was decided on that roll-off. Give me 1 sec. I think he has it posted in the video description itself. Ken's fleet had Surprise Attack, Hyperspace Assault, and Solar Corona. So all those suck for victories. Maybe choose Surprise Attack, because then at least I can put my fleets together and I'm already going really slow. But Hyperspace Assault, if you were able to get one of those hard cells behind the victories, there's really nothing I can do. Victories have terrible shots that aren't their front shots. And then it would have been able to raid me really, really early. So that would have been a great objective for him. And then same thing with Solar Corona. I would have to center deploy, and then Ken could choose a side and just come into the victories, and the victories wouldn't have enough time to maneuver to get all their shots. So losing that roll-off and being made to go first when his fleet against mine, my fleet's terrible at first player. Like, absolutely terrible, because none of the objectives work for me or my strategy. So that die roll is really what determined a lot of this. So hopefully that answers your question there. So okay, if there's no other questions, I'm gonna just let the chat go for a few more moments. I'm gonna probably start wrapping it up then. If you guys aren't aware, we have a Discord. You're more than welcome to come join it. The links should be in the description. And you can chit-chat with Ken, me, and a bunch of other Armada players that enjoy playing Armada. We also talk about Battletech, and we've started up with Legion. And so our second episode of Legion should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. It's currently being edited. Man, being an adult and moving really has affected how we film and release things. So we're both looking forward to both getting back into the swing of things and moving on. We have seasons 3 and 4 currently being planned, and we're just waiting for the studios to get fully up and running to start filming them again. Yeah, big shout out to our Patreon members. We appreciate all the help, and we're incrementally making changes, so there will be some cool changes that will be in season 3, so we're looking forward to showing that off. Doesn't look like there's any other questions or comments in the chat. So we're going to call it here. Thank you for everyone tuning in to watch it live, and for those of you that have watched this video on just normal playback. Until next time, this is Ion Radio and the Backseat Admiral, and I have been John. Take care.